Free Me Podcast.
Trying to build a prison. Trying to build a prison.
Mr. Chad Marks, author of Blood on the Razor Wire. Has done 17 years, 4 months, and he's been home a month, right?
Oh, no, I've been home 8 months. I came home in June 2020.
June 2020, 8 months. Okay. And you did 17 years off a 40-year bid.
Yeah.
So how did you come home early?
What I did was I ended up filing a compassionate release motion. And I was released on compassionate release. The judge found there were extraordinary and compelling reasons in my case, and it reduced my sentence from 40 years to 20. So I actually did 17 years, 5 months, and 21 days. I was a jailhouse lawyer in federal prison. I actually wrote the first motion for compassionate release that ever won. It was the Conrado Cantu case out of Texas. I had filed what was called a Holloway motion in my own case, and my judge said that this was an extraordinary case that deserved an extraordinary remedy. He used those words. Well, those words happened to be in the First Step Act that Donald Trump passed. So that kind of opened the door for me to file a compassionate release motion. I was eventually represented by former federal judge John Gleason. He was the guy that prosecuted John Gotti when he was a prosecutor, then became a federal judge for 22 years. And he helped me after my stuff was filed. He got involved in the case, and I ended up getting out a compassionate release.
How did that feel, brother?
Well, I mean, walking out of prison was, just to smell the air and know that it smelled different, man, than what it smelled like on the other side. As crazy as that might sound, when I walked out of that gate and heard a crack behind me, it felt good, but I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. When they come try to grab me in the parking lot, was this a mistake? So I went to the person that came to pick me up. I rushed to her car, Lisa Jacoby. She had worked at the Federal Defender's Office in my city for over 22 years, was an advocate for me, and she ended up coming to pick me up the second time because I was walking out 3 weeks earlier, and the government had filed an emergency appeal that morning, and they stopped me. I seen my family in the parking lot. I was walking out. I was literally, I'd say probably 50 steps at the most away from walking out of that gate. And they called on a walkie-talkie and said, hey, stop him. There was an appeal filed. Stop him immediately. So they stopped me from walking out, went back in, and 3 weeks later I walked out. So I had that fear that anything could happen. I wasn't sure if it was real. Even when the gate closed behind me, I just rushed to the car and told her, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. So, man, it felt good. It felt good to finally be free.
What you express, right, is something that people just can't explain, right? You just can't explain that. It's like when we try to explain a picture, right? It's like when we try to explain the Holocaust. It's like when we try to explain something that nobody can really just grasp unless you've been through it. That's some of the issue that I've been out 4 years now, and that's some of the issue that I'm dealing with out here when it comes to relationships is trying to get people to understand really what I've went through, what I've felt. And unless you're in that pressure, unless you can feel that level of anxiety, that level of stress on you, right? You just can't explain that. It's like telling somebody that you've done 17 years, right? to them it's 17 years, and they pass over it like it's nothing. They're like, oh man, that's a long time. But let's put 17 years into perspective, right? What was the last thing that you bought before you went in? Like, what was the last thing that you bought?
The last thing that I bought, you know what? I think one of the last things that I bought before I went to prison was a Sprint flip phone. That's when the flip phones had just come out. So I bought a Sprint flip phone, man. I remember that phone, and someone would call you, and just the circle would be going on it with their number. And then I walked out to a computer that had a phone in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
What year was that?
I went to jail February 4, 2003.
2003. So you and I are somewhat similar. So for me, I was the LG flip phone, right? And the thing about it is it had the little number on the outside of it, right? Yeah. This was the big thing. So you didn't have to flip the phone open to see who was calling you. You could see the number on the outside, and you could actually take a picture. As a black and white picture. You could take a picture with it, and you could email it to somebody. This was the last phone. I just got this in maybe a month. And then when I went in, you could actually record for like 30 seconds. Yeah. So 2003, right? And I want my listeners to just stop and think for a second, right? Just go back to 2003 and just think about everything that you've done in your life since 2003. And this gentleman, myself, and other people have been just stuck in one spot, just trying to come home, right? And I don't know how else to put it into perspective. For me, it's like time stopped, right? And it's like we're just watching life go by through a window. Life is moving at the speed of a train, and we're just stuck here, feeling forgotten, feeling left behind. And all of that builds up to all of this anxiety of coming home. And now, like you say, you're getting ready to come home. And again, you're playing through your mind like I have, like anybody else has. What can these people stop me from going home on?
Yeah. You always play that in your mind, and, just, to the point that you were making. I used to tell people all the time, you spent 17 years, 5 months, and 21 days out here in the real world. I spent 17 years, 5 months, 21 days in prison. You had different experiences every day. I had the same experience every day. And like you said, I believe that I've seen plenty of men in prison grow physically, but never grow mentally. A lot of guys are stuck. Like I went to prison at 24, and I've seen guys that went to prison at 24 and they've been in there 25, 30 years, and they're still 24 years old mentally, man. They never grew up. And prison has a way of doing that to people. And I was stuck in that little time frame thing for a while until I said, you know what? I want to change my life. I want to do better with my life. Because if they do bring parole back, what am I going to tell the parole board? That I got caught with a knife, that I got caught with a shank, that I sold dope in prison, that I was getting drunk in prison. I don't want to tell the parole board that. I want to bring the parole board, a file that says, hey, I've changed my character, that I regret the irrational, irresponsible choices that I made that led to my imprisonment. So that's when I changed my life, man. 100% changed my life. And when I began to change my life, I began to grow mentally, not only physically, but mentally. And I started to appreciate my freedom and appreciate what life had to offer. And, that's why I went to work in the law library, and, I started working on my own case. I worked on plenty of other people's cases. I've got numerous people out of jail. You've probably seen it. I posted on Facebook all the time.
I have, man. And I applaud you, dog, for real. What you're doing and what you've done is very, very rare. I give you mad respect and props for what you've done. Anybody that can come home, and this is what I'm trying to do. Anybody that can come home from that, you've been gone 17 years. You have every right to come home and just live your life, right? Anybody that can come home and sacrifice their freedom in that sense to turn around and try to help their brothers and sisters is a soldier by all count. So I give you mad props for that, man.
I appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. I do it because I know what it's like, man. I knew what it was like to, I couldn't get people to help me because, every time I wrote for help, they said, well, you had 2 gun charges. I got 5 years for the first gun, 25 for the second, and 10 years for the drugs. So it had always been, we can't help you. Organizations like FAM, hey, sorry, we can't help you. You got a gun. So I knew what it was like to be, desperate, to want help. And I told dudes when I left prison, I said, man, I'm going out there to do everything I said I would do. And I wasn't building houses in prison for 17 years. I was doing legal work. So this is what I do. This is my life. And I know what it's like to suffer, and people need help. And there's plenty of men and women, like I know, that deserve that help. So who was going to come out here and do it? I've heard plenty of dudes go home, hey, Chad, I'm going to write you, man. I'm going to do this for you. And you know what? No one ever does it. So I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy to tell my boys, hey, man, I got you. And I walk out and I leave everybody behind. And all right, I'm living my life now and I forgot about you. I'll never forget what, that chicken day's like, or what the count's like, or what it's like to have a guard tell you, to shut the fuck up and get in your room or destroy your cell. I'll never forget that stuff. And, people would think, well, federal correctional officers, because I used to probably think this, these are professional people. They're federal guards. Man, these people are some of the most horrible people you'll ever meet in your life. They treat us like we're third world citizens. They treat us worse than dogs, And, there's people out there that'll say, oh, they got cable TV and, well, they get cheeseburgers and they got meatloaf. But what they don't know is the stuff's made out of pink slime. The food's so horrible you can't eat it anymore, And who cares about cable TV? What you care about is, your family, the people that you love and that you care about. When you go to bed hungry at night, you care about that. When you're not sure if you're going to ever see your mother again alive or be able to, take her out to dinner ever again. Those are the things that matter at the end of the night, man. When you lay down and it's only you by yourself. So I wanted to help them dudes, man, that were in the same position as me and some females that I help. I want them to be able to experience what Alice Johnson experienced. I'm sure you've seen her, right? Donald Trump released her on clemency. She ran across the street, all happy, her family's crying. More people deserve that. And I'm a firm believer that there has to be consequences for your actions, but I also believe that the punishment, that the time should fit the crime, man. That you shouldn't send nonviolent drug offenders off to prison for, 40, 50 years or for life. You just shouldn't do it, man. I got a guy right now, I'm working on his case out of Texas, Joseph Mesa. The guy was, I think he was 22 years old. He did a robbery with a BB gun. They gave him 85 years. No one was hurt. The dude's got over 200 programs in prison, college education. This guy deserves a second chance. He's been in there 25 years. Release him. Show some compassion. He deserves to get out of prison more than I did. But yet I'm here and he's still there. But I'm working on this case.
This is my point, what you just said. And when I started this program and when I started my organization, right, I started in the sense of reform, criminal justice reform. But being where I've been and knowing what I know, I cannot sit in front of these politicians. I cannot sit in front of these legislators, these governors. I can't do it. I cannot sit in front of these people and have them lie to my face and placate me about, oh, well, we want to pass this bill and we want to do this. Listen, stop telling me what you want to do. Do it. It's there. You can do it. If you're not doing it, right, then you're part of the problem. And I don't even want to have a discussion with you because like what you say is absolutely disgusting, right? And same position, like you said, I got a guy down in Miami, 18 years old, did a robbery. They gave him 60 years, right? Stacked charges, all of this. The man's a grandfather. He's never had the chance to be a father yet,
Sad, man. Sad reality with our criminal justice system, right? The Department of Justice, for me, is not a Department of Justice when they do things like that. For me, it's a Department of Prosecutions. And like you said, as far as the, legislators and the senators and the congressmen, I'm willing to sit down with them at any moment because I'm a firm believer that you can't fix something you won't face. But I also think that we have to demand change. It can't just be, just, lip service. We got to demand it because we live in a government that's supposed to be for the people, by the people.
Tired of lip service.
If they're not going to do it, then we need to start putting our people up there, right? That doesn't mean, some people some people have gotten mad at me when I say this. But, sometimes people have to go to jail. I deserve to go to prison, 100%. I was 24 years old, but I didn't deserve a 40-year sentence, especially, and some of your viewers might not know this, when the government offered a plea that could have been as little as 10 years. So if 10 years was sufficient for my crime, because I exercised a constitutional right to trial, how is 40 okay? Our forefathers said I had that right. So you think I could have been rehabilitated and been back in the community in 10 years, right, on a plea agreement, as low as 10, 11 to 14, but no lower than 10 because that was my mandatory minimum. But because I went to trial, 40 years is sufficient, but not greater than necessary to achieve the goals of sentencing under 3553A. It's an oxymoron. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
And they justify that with the fact that because, right, you didn't take the plea, you didn't take ownership, and because you didn't show acceptance of responsibility by cooperating and telling your part in what you've done, therefore you need a longer sentence and more time to think about it. It's going to take more time to rehabilitate that mind. That's for a person that just comes in and just is completely acceptable for the responsibility. This is how they justify that.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It's absurd, and it's draconian. And what this is doing, right, is it's eating our nation. I believe that everything that you see today going on in the streets is a result of what's going on within our prison system. We're churning out monsters. We're churning out PTSD. We're churning out killers. We're sending people and putting them in a position that is altering their life. People are going to prison that may have not been a killer, and they're coming home killers because of the environment that they're in, right?
Well, you got some guys that go to prison and they're not killers, and they kill people in prison because of the environment that they put them in. And I'm sure you've probably seen the video with
and it was on.
He's trying to stab him in the back.
I knew that it was a strong hit because of the color of the blood, and it's dark, and that's a sign that where you got an artery or a vein or something like that.
You need to SWAT down here, full gear. Stephen. Hey, officer, go ahead, come back again. Here. This Johnny. Yeah. 1 and 2. Yeah. Take the medical. SWAT, full gear in Cedar 3 now. Section 3 here. Rack in, everybody! Rack in, everybody! Rack in, rack in, rack in.
Why did you stab him so many times?
All I can explain really is that he kept moving. I just stabbed the shit out of him, until he didn't move anymore. And I ended up stabbing the man to death.
The shank went into 10.
Free Podcast.